Welcome to The Core. If you're interested in your health, you're in the right place. Stick around for fad-free, no BS tips and education to help you reach your goals. I'm Aline, a certified fat loss and nutrition coach by Precision Nutrition and CHFI.
And I am Shannon, a NASM certified personal trainer.
In today's episode, we're talking about 6 foundational things for your health. Now, we all know that there are many, many things that are important to health. It's not one thing. It's not 10 things. There are many things that contribute to being healthy, to having a healthy lifestyle, to aging healthy. And what we want you to think about here is we don't want you to major in the minors. What that means is we don't want you to get like some obscure detail about health and turn that into your whole focus, right? Like people will get some small detail and we will blow that out of proportion, and people start thinking that that is the most important thing for your health, when in reality, the most important things for your health, they are foundational things. They are the basic things that we really need to work on. And then after you have these things well established, then you can go and move forward into other things if you want. Okay. Most people, and by most, I don't mean 60%. I mean, the absolute majority of people are going to be very healthy. You're going to have good health markers. You're going to have a good relationship with food. You're going to have good response from your workouts, and you're going to have good stamina and energy to go through your day. Most people are very, very healthy with the basics. You don't have to go spiraling out of control. So focus on the basics, master these things, and then you're going to keep going. So today, we only picked 3 fitness and 3 nutrition basics for health. Now, these are not all of them. This is not a comprehensive list of all the things you should do to be healthy, but these are 3 that we feel are very, very important. So Shannon's going to talk to us about the 3 fitness one. I am going to come back and talk about 3 nutrition things that really help you with foundations for your health.
Yes, thank you. Just kind of touching base on the foundation. I mean, you got to look at your fitness, nutrition, your whole wellness journey as like building a house. I mean, you have to have a solid foundation before you build up, right? You know, you're not going to start with the windows on the second level and then expect everything to just fall into place and you're progressing and you know all of the things. So the first topic that I chose was your glutes, your butt, your buns. And the importance of
my favorite body part to train, by the way.
I know, if you're sore in your butt, I'm just like, I can barely sit down to go to the pod. It's a good day. The glutes they're just such a huge stabilizer in our entire body. And it really ties into our kinetic chain. So our kinetic chain is our feet and ankles, knees, your hip complex into your shoulders, and then your head. So the glutes, like I said, are really, really a huge component of stabilizing your entire body, as well as your posture. And another reason why I chose this one is I feel a lot of people have lower back pain, and glutes have a lot to do with us having lower back pain. So first I'm going to go over 2 words that maybe you've heard or haven't heard, but one is concentric. And this is when the muscle tension rises to meet the resistance and then remains stable as the muscle shortens. Eccentric is when the muscle lengthens as the resistance becomes greater than the force the muscle is producing. Now, that's a lot of technical terms, and I'm not expecting you to remember that, but I will be using those 2 words today. But a nice example that I like to use with my clients is a bicep curl. So concentric is when you're curling, you have tension on your muscle and your muscle is shortening. And then eccentric is when you're lowering. The resistance becomes greater now, right? Because you're lowering the gravity, and your muscle is lengthening as well. So kind of think of that biceps curl example as we move forward. So first,
can I tell you how I memorized that?
I would love to hear it.
Because I'm not yeah, anyway. So concentric for me is the concentration. Like I have to think about it. It's when I do like the and the eccentric for me, I just it reminds me of exhaling. Like it's the part when I'm not as concentrated, I'm not as tense. Now this is not technical. Shannon gave you the technical. That's just how I memorized it. That concentric is the part that I'm going like, I'm concentrating, I'm focusing, I'm getting this done. And the eccentric, like I don't have to think as hard.
Yeah. And that would be a good one for like your squat, because you're exhaling on the eccentric motion when you stand. So that's good. I like it. So there's there are just three major muscle groups, three muscles in general that make up your glutes. So the gluteus max, that's your powerhouse. That's the big mamma jamma that everyone sees. And that concentrically accelerates hip extension, abduction, so away from your body, so external rotation. And then it stabilizes your lumbo-hip complex. So the pelvic region, your hips, your core, lower back, all of the fun things. Next is your glute medius. So that concentrically accelerates your hip abduction and internal rotation. So the glute medius it's a little bit more, it's a smaller muscle. So we have anterior and posterior muscle fibers with this one. So it kind of depends on, if the anterior or the posterior muscle fibers are fired at this point. So the medius also accelerates hip abduction and external rotation when the posterior fibers are fired. So it also eccentrically decelerates hip abduction and external rotation. So there's a lot going on. There's the muscle fibers, there's acceleration and deacceleration, and it kind of gives you that, not the power, but kind of the ability to stabilize your rotations, internal and external. Glute minimus, that concentrically accelerates hip abduction, hip flexion, and internal rotation. And then it eccentrically decelerates hip adduction, so coming back into your body. There will be a test on this after our podcast. I was writing all this down and I was like, does anyone care? But I do, so that's why I'm sharing it to you. Mainly, there's three major muscle groups in your glutes. And they all need to be working and firing together for you to really perform really daily life. And then of course your exercises properly. So again, these muscles stabilize your entire pelvic hip region. As a trainer, and you can do this at home too, but there are three assessments that you really want to focus on that will actually kind of guide you on how strong or weak your glutes are. And the one is the overhead squat assessment. Next is your single leg squat. And then after that is various mobility assessments. And that depends on the client ability and safety. So here's the deal. If you're lacking glute activation, if you have glute weakness, your movements will be altered. You have probably tight hamstrings, which are actually more dominant than your glutes, and we don't necessarily want that. Your feet and ankles are also compromised at this point. So a lot of times I see the foot and the ankle roll in while the toes point out, and then the knees cave in. And then a lot of people have that anterior pelvic tilt, which usually leads to shoulders rounding forward. So if you can imagine from the ground up, all of that happening all the way to the shoulders rounding forward, that's because your glutes are weak. So yes, everything is connected. We have that kinetic chain, but it really just kind of starts out with the glutes, and it's something simple that we can all work on a little bit more. So exercises that you can do at home that focus on multiple planes of motion, but mainly focusing in on those glutes, are your band lateral step. Now with this, you want to focus on slow, controlled movement. Because I have clients, they'll put that band underneath their feet and they're jamming from
Sprinting.
side to side. Please don't. Your glutes are probably going to really feel it, but now your ankles are really rotating in and those knees are really caving in. I see a lot of the knees caving in with that band lateral steps. You need to keep those knees parallel to one another like a train track. Band forward and back. So this is more of your agility. So if you have an infinity band around the largest part of your calf muscles or your thighs, and you're just stepping forward and back in a fairly fast motion. Next is a single leg RDL. Onto something sturdy, focus on that single leg. And as you come up, weight is on your heels and you're going to squeeze that glute. And then next is lateral hops with stabilization. So I love the stabilization and the lateral hops because a lot of times you'll hop to the side and your body immediately wants to hop to the other side again. It wants to keep going in motion. But with that stabilization, you have to hold. And that is targeting your mobility, your speed and agility, and your glutes. And that's what we want. So, Eleni, do you have any questions or anything that you want to add in on the glutes?
I would say that, I have a feeling that this podcast, our whole work is mostly focused on females, but females do tend to work more the glutes, right? And for some reason, men tend to just not. I don't know why, but it seems to be more of a struggle to get them to actually work their lower body. And it's so important. If only they really understood how important it is. You want to run better, you want to, I don't know, do daily life better, how important it would be to actually train their lower body with the same amount of gusto that they tend to train their upper, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You always see the famous leg day memes or whatever, kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can look at a pair of glutes and you can say, wow, they do a lot of squats. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're strong or that they're firing correctly. So when you are working on your glutes, go slow. I mean, maybe take that second pause in between your eccentric and concentric motions. So isolate, squeeze your glutes, engage your core, keep breathing. But
Don't
really,
forget to breathe.
yeah, please. And then just focus on firing your posterior chain. So, and you're just, like I said, you're going to alleviate some of the lower kinetic chain issues and probably decrease lower back pain quite significantly. So my next topic is exercise versus training and the SAID principle. So I am not on either side of the exercise versus training. I just want people to understand the difference in how our body adapts to our movements. So exercise is where you go through the motions, pretty much any movement that requires physical effort. And then training can be those same movements, but you're intentionally programming and are thinking of a specific goal as you complete them. So you'll maybe focus on all planes of motion. You'll pay attention to the efficiency of your body movement. You'll focus on injury prevention exercises as well. So for an example, during the summer months, I train for a triathlon. I have my specific goals. I have my markers that I meet to get to the first weekend in August when my triathlon hits. Typically come December to March-ish, I'm exercising. I'm giving my nervous system a break. I'm giving myself a mental break, but I am still maintaining, I am still focusing in on movements, injury prevention, that kind of thing. So the reason why these two tie in together is with the SAID principle. So the SAID principle, which stands for specific adaptation to impose demands, means that our body will adapt to specific demands placed upon it. So in other words, you get what you train for. So if you want to run a 5K, so all you do is run, you're probably going to meet your goal of running that 5K, but you might have more injuries because you didn't focus on strengthening your knees, your glutes, your core is still weak. You still have rounded shoulders. So that's where training comes into play, that even though you have that end goal, that end result that you want to achieve, you need to impose demands on it. You need to do other exercises. You need to train to get to your goal. All right, my last one, the components of a workout. So with all of my clients, regardless of what their goals are, these are the components of a workout for success. And every time is going to be a little bit different, but you always want to start out with a warm-up. Like I said in the podcast that we made going over goals, I cannot tell you how many times I would see people walk into the gym and their warm-ups would consist of bicep curls, calf raises, and my favorite one, doing at least 100 sit-ups. So you need to focus on a warm-up. It's so darn important. And you know what? Even if all you do is your warm-up, wonderful. But warm-ups consist of flexibility and mobility, and then a little bit of cardio. So these components basically complete your dynamic stretching. So warm-ups are an opportunity for you to increase your range of motion and then prep your body for your actual exercise session. So always get in a warm-up. This should be a minimum of 5 minutes up to 15 minutes.
Would you say that a warm-up is even more important if people are working out very early in the day when their body is colder? Or does it not make a difference?
I mean, I think it does make a difference. I think you could have some arguments on that. So if you are my client at 5 a.m., warm-up's very, very important because you're probably not even really awake yet. Versus a client that I might have at 5 p.m. that has a fairly physical job. I mean, they're already warm, but we will still do specific warm-up exercises to prep the body and to avoid injury. So all equally important, but you can see the dynamics there a little bit different. Second is your core. You don't want to forget about your core, because this improves your whole lumbo-pelvic hip complex. So you want to choose 1 to 2 core stabilization exercises, such as a plank or a floor cobra. So this is where you are stabilizing your core, but you're also targeting muscles surrounding your core as well as your trunk area. Then you want to focus on 1 to 2 side or rotational exercises, such as a standing side bend or a Russian twist. Finally, at least 1 explosive core exercise. So this could be throwing a med ball. Please make sure that it's a med ball and not a slam ball, or vice versa. I had a client also think it was a slam ball and they used a med ball. So they had to go to the ER.
Oof.
So know your balls and know what they are filled with. So next is going to be balance. 1 to 2 balance stabilization exercises. So this can be single leg balance and then into a strength balance. So single leg balance is exactly how it sounds. And you can also add variety to this. So if you have a Basu ball, or if you're on an uneven terrain, something to kind of target and challenge that single leg balance. And then that strength balance is basically anything that you can do with 2 feet, but now you're doing it with 1. So this can be lunges, this can be step up to a balance. Just anything that you can do with 2 legs, do it with 1. And I've had a lot of times people do single leg balances with some kind of core rotation as well with that med ball, adding some variation there. Next is you want to do some kind of plyometrics or SAQ. SAQ stands for speed, agility, and quickness. So this can be in a circuit or an interval manner. So this focuses on your work to rest ratio. Choose 3 to 5 exercise for a specific amount of time, then follow that by rest. So this one's really good for sport endurance athletes or clients for sure. This one probably not so good for individuals that don't have the ability to hop or move super quickly. That isn't safe for them. So hopping movements with stabilization can be like your skaters. And then another one can be like your squat jump with a hold. So now here you're working on your stabilization and your landing mechanics. Next is your resistance. So this can literally be anything. This can be body weight. This can be dumbbells, kettlebells, bands, tubing, suspension, and that's like a TRX. So literally anything, some kind of resistance. Depends on what type of training you're into, but I would say a minimum of 4 resistance exercises up to what your time allows and your goals. Lastly is cool down. So this is going to focus on static stretching. So this is where you hold a stretch for 15 to 30 seconds, or you could utilize it as a light walk. Or if you are more of an athlete, you can take your cool down as just basically a blast at the end. So you're depleting any energy that you have at the end. So my fitness classes that are a little bit younger, our cool down is where I make them run. We run for 5 minutes and you just kind of do what you need to do. And then the following couple of minutes, we're just cooling down. We're grabbing that water. We're focusing in on some stretching, some mobility exercises, maybe if our hips are sore, that type of thing. My clients that are usually 50 and older, we focus more on that functional stretching. So what muscle groups did we work that day? What are their lifestyles like? And what do we need to stretch out and focus on to make sure that when they are leaving class, their heart rate has basically come back to normal? So my three notes were glutes. Make sure to work on your glutes. Exercise versus training, there's no right or wrong way, but focus on the said principle. Know that your body will adapt to what kind of demand you impose it on. And then your components of a workout.
They fit into each other really well, right? Like, okay, you can almost go backwards in the order she said, where like, okay, this is how you build a workout. These are the main components. Are you going to do this workout? Are you exercising or are you training during this workout? And please do not forget to work your glutes.
Yeah.
All right. So for nutrition, I chose 3 things. Now, nutrition can get a bit sticky because there's way too many people that have way too many opinions about what is the right thing and the best thing. And I am going to absolutely be foundational with you guys today. The first foundational principle for nutrition for health is that you have to know what you eat. And as obvious as this might sound, this is not true for everybody. So the simplest way to do this is to keep a food diary. Now, this does not mean that you have to count calories. This does not mean that you have to track portions. This does not mean that you have to count macros. This does not mean that you have to restrict yourself in any way. This means that you have to know what you eat, because your body reflects what you do with it and what you put into it. If you don't know what you're putting into your body, you don't know what to change when you want to make a change, be it to manage your weight to lower it, or be it to manage your weight to increase it, or be it to manage your weight to stay where you are. You really have to know what you eat. And let me give you an example of how people think they know what they eat, but they don't really know. If you are a parent, you have done this many, many times. Your kid is eating something and they finish eating. And I don't know, there's half a dozen goldfish in that bowl, and you just eat them before you put the bowl in the dishwasher. Or maybe you are preparing a salad, and while you are chopping certain vegetables, you eat a few of them. Maybe you go out for ice cream as a family and you're not really in the mood for ice cream, or maybe for some reason you think that you can't eat ice cream. And so you decide not to get one for yourself. And then you taste your kids' ice cream 2 or 3 times. Maybe while you prepare a sandwich, you nibble on some cheese, maybe on some ham, maybe on some whatever it is. So we don't accurately understand what we eat most of the time. Most people, until you get into some sort of program where you have to look at what you eat, most of the time we don't know what we're eating. And here's the thing, your body, your body keeps track of every single thing you eat, even if you don't. Your body accurately knows everything you ate, even if you don't remember. I once had guests in my home and very close. This is someone that it was fine to have this conversation. This conversation came up and I asked, okay, so what did you have for breakfast? And they gave me like exactly what they ate for breakfast. And I'm like, okay, but what about those chips that you had about an hour later? And the chips, actually, my son was eating some chips like mid-morning. And don't judge my parenting here. So my son was eating some chips mid-morning, and he got a few from the bowl. He ate 2 or 3, and I'm like, do you remember? It's like, no, that doesn't count. That wasn't part of my breakfast. I'm like, yeah, but you ate that. And we do that a lot. Social situations, it's even more. How many times have you been to a party, or maybe you went out with some friends? You lost track of how many drinks you had. You lost track of how many times you went to wherever the food was displayed and got some food. You have no idea how much you actually ate. So there's nothing wrong with you if you don't know what you eat. However, for you to enhance your health and better manage your weight, if you don't know what you eat, there's nothing you can change. There's nothing you can improve, because unless you know what you eat, how do you improve? How do you improve something that you don't know, something that isn't tangible to you? So the first step is really keeping a food journal is actually a great way to start this. And do it maybe for 2 or 3 days. Every single thing, you bite it, you nibble it, you sip it, write it down. And you're going to see what you actually eat, not what you intended to eat, not what you think you're supposed to eat, not what you think is the healthiest for you, but what you actually eat. That's important information. The second foundational nutritional principle for health is food volume. Now, this is a whole episode in itself. I'm going to condense this as best as I can. First of all, there are no bad foods. Foods aren't good or bad. There is no moral value in food. Okay, so there isn't any food, aside from clinical reasons why some people can't eat certain foods. There are medical conditions where you can't eat certain foods. Aside from that, there are no bad foods. There are no foods that are inherently going to fatten you. There are no foods that are inherently going to slim you down. Food is food. That being said, eating food volume is going to help you manage your weight, provided that food volume is lower in calories. So explaining this is, when you think of food as a spectrum, and let's use the example of corn, you can go from corn on the cob, which is, as whole as you can get corn to be, all the way the other end of the spectrum is a bag of Doritos. Now, technically, Doritos is corn because that's how it started out, but it went a long way to get from the corn into the bag. So corn, there's a spectrum of foods that go in between the corn on the cob and the Doritos. Now, the closer you get to whole foods, the more volume of food you're getting for fewer calories. The closer you get to the ultra processed foods, you're getting more calories for less volume. Again, I am not saying that one is good or bad. Food has no moral value, and you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. And if you've ever heard me talk, if you're one of my clients, you've heard this a million times. Food has no moral value. However, foods that are more whole, they have more volume for fewer calories. Foods that are more processed, they tend to have more calories for less volume. If you want to manage your weight, especially when you're trying to lose fat, you want to eat a lot of volume so that you feel full, because fat loss only happens when you eat less calories than your body consumes. You want to feel fuller. You really need to load up on foods that are high volume and low calories. You're thinking fruits, you're thinking vegetables, you're thinking lean proteins. Okay. So these are the things that you really want to really fill up on. And even without counting calories, calories count. Okay. You don't have to count the calories for your body to use this energy. That's the energy that your body uses. So if you want to just manage your weight wherever you're managing it, either to lower, to maintain, or to increase, food volume is really going to help you in the loss and the management stages. And finally, the third thing is talking about sleep. Now, sleep doesn't seem like it's something that has to do with nutrition, but you would be surprised at the numbers. I'm not going into all of these studies today. We will have a podcast all about sleep, but you would be surprised to see how much your sleep affects how you eat. So we have two basic, now this is an oversimplification, but here we go, just so that you have an idea. We have two basic hormones that control hunger. Ghrelin is the hormone that tells your body that you're hungry, and leptin is the hormone that tells your body that you're not hungry. Now, these are in constant web and flow in your body. They're constantly going up and down according to how much energy you're intaking. While of course, you've noticed this, even if you've never paid attention, you're feeling hungry, you start eating, you feel less hungry. That is your body balancing out these hormones. You were hungry, your ghrelin was high. As you ate, your ghrelin lowered, your leptin increased, and you started feeling not hungry. Now, sleep has a massive effect on these hormones. So what numerous studies have found is that lack of sleep, meaning usually we see this in below 5 to 6 hours a night, you start naturally having increased ghrelin. Even though you eat, that hormone doesn't decrease the same way that it would decrease when you have slept enough. And conversely, your leptin, it stays very low when you don't sleep, even though it would be higher in certain moments if you had slept. So again, this is an oversimplification. We're going to go through this, but my point is that if you want to manage your weight well, you need to sleep. Your body will not only mess with your hormones, but also what studies have found is that when you don't sleep enough, not only do you feel hungrier because your ghrelin is higher throughout the day, but you feel hungrier for more processed carbohydrate foods, meaning you want comfort food, you want energy, and you want it fast. Again, there's more details. This is an exciting topic. We will go through it. But those are my three basics for nutrition. It has nothing to do with counting your calories or doing any specific tracking. You just got to know what you're eating. You got to focus on the kind of food you're eating so you can eat more, and you got to sleep.
I love all of those. Not one more than the other, but I will touch base on the sleep. Not only can sleep assist with your body composition, but it can assist in how you recover your muscles as well. So the more sleep, I mean, it's the most underrated part of recovery. I mean, we think protein. Yes, that's great, but your rest and sleep is even more so important than all of
Sleep
those
is the
other components.
superhero of health.
It is just, and if you don't sleep a lot or very well at night, try and take naps. I mean,
Yep.
I don't want to name drop, but there's a gentleman in my life that doesn't sleep very well at night. So he'll try and associate a few different naps in throughout the day, just so he can get his hours of sleep in throughout that 24 hours. And he functions well on it, and you just kind of have to figure it out. But naps are good. Sleep is good. We highly recommend it here at the Core.
Yes. And finally, I'd like to leave you all with one last observation is that at the core, you can schedule in an assessment, either a fitness assessment or a nutrition assessment, and we will do this assessment with you, give you the results of where you should focus on. And yeah, you can get that done regardless of joining the program or not. You are welcome to have us assess your fitness or nutrition. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We would greatly appreciate it if you left a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Remember that you can join our email list at practicethecore.com for more tips on how to improve your health. We are Aline and Shannon, and this is The Core.